Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Wondergoal, the soccer betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Lieboff. Joining me in just a moment are my colleagues, friends, Anthony DeBundo from King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, and BJ Cunningham from the beautiful state of Iowa. But before I bring in those two gentlemen, a reminder that Wondergoal is presented to you by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. Sign up with promo code ACTION in New Jersey, Colorado, and Ohio to get Action Network's exclusive sign-up offer. Bet $1 on any game, get $200. Bonus bets. Fun week. I think we all needed the international break. I know I did. Had to gear myself up for an Islanders playoff push in the NHL. Had to get ready for the start of the Australian Football League season, which has been riveting stuff. But now I'm ready to get back into some Premier League, and it's what a way to dive back in. 7:30 a.m. kickoff on Saturday morning. Man City hosting Liverpool, the two preseason favorites. Obviously, not anymore. Neither one of them are the favorite to win the league anymore. That would be BJ's Arsenal, but City right on their heels. City's minus 175 at home. Liverpool 4-1. The draw is plus 350. I think there's a way you could look at this and think Liverpool has some value with the teams coming back from international breaks, some kind of added variance there. But these teams have played some thrilling matchups in the past, BJ, and feels like that's what you're looking for here.
Yeah, Michael, I need that international break too. I need some AFCON qualifiers, to reset me. But we're back, and this is a fascinating tactical battle. What's interesting about this is what happened the last time at Anfield, because Liverpool, as we've been talking about so many times, can't press the way they used to. So against City the last time, they just didn't do that. They just sat in a 4-5-1 mid-block, and they let City have 63% possession, and it worked. They won the match 1-0. They created over 2 expected goals. In that match, they had a passes per defensive action of 19.7. They forced just 1 high turnover and only had 6 10-plus pass sequences. That's not the Liverpool of last year or 2 years ago even. I say, what's interesting about this, though, is like Pep knows that. Pep, what we've seen from him is he obviously loves to tinker. He loves to change up his tactics. He might go and do what he did against Arsenal, whereas he completely conceded possession, didn't try to counterpress them in the final third, and essentially let Arsenal try to build up and then try to get at them in transition. So I'm not really sure what Pep is going to do here. Haaland is obviously questionable. He didn't play for Norway during the UEFA qualifiers. But, City right before the international break looked pretty good. 7-0 against Leipzig, 6-0 against Burnley in the FA Cup. So the question is here, can Liverpool be effective in transition against City? And I think they can, because, City, although their defense is obviously still, has some of the best expected goals numbers in the Premier League and throughout Europe, they've been pretty vulnerable against the Big Six this season. If you go back through their results, the first meeting with United, it was obviously they won the match 6-3. United created 1.7 expected goals. The last time against Liverpool created over 2 expected goals. The match against Chelsea, that was when Chelsea hit their low point. That was probably their best defensive performance. Arsenal created 1.6 expected goals. Spurs in the first meeting created a little under 1 expected goal, but did score twice. Then in the reverse fixture at White Hart Lane, Spurs created 1.4 expected goals. And then most recently as well, Manchester United created 1.7 at Old Trafford. So the City defense has not been very good against the Big Six. So I think Liverpool can be very, very effective in transition here. So I have a little over 3.5 goals projected for this match. So I'm going to be on over 3 goals at minus 105.
Yeah, like I said, I think that it's Liverpool or nothing on a side. I do agree with you, though. It does feel like this game should have some scoring in it. City's got to go for it here. Anthony, what are your thoughts here? Citizens and Reds, your boys.
Yeah, my boys, they have kept their last 4 Premier League opponents under 1 expected goal, which I do think is interesting. And certainly, Fabinho has been really poor for them this year. And that's been, I think, the biggest issue. Thiago's always in and out of the lineup, but Fabinho, not being the defensive midfielder that we're used to him being, has really left them exposed. But when they've had their full complement of defenders available, they haven't been quite as bad, maybe, as some of the market has suggested at times now with this number, and as We've seen at times where on set pieces they've gotten destroyed and whatnot. The question for me here is the injuries, though, because Haaland didn't go on international duty. He's got like a bit of a hip thing going on. He's 50% according to Premier League Injuries.com. They're pretty reliable for injury news. I like, following them. So he's like 50-50 here, it looks like. Darwin Nunez is also questionable. He's listed as much more likely to play, just like a knock on his ankle. And then Luis Diaz could also make a return here, which I think is going to be a huge piece if Liverpool can finally reinsert him into the lineup. I don't know whose role he takes. It's kind of weird because you have Salah and they've been playing Gakpo up the middle and Nunez up the left. I think their best three is probably Diaz, Nunez, and Salah with Gakpo kind of off the bench, and Jota too. So like, it is hard to know exactly what we're getting with Haaland and Nunez right now as of, recording on Wednesday. I will have the preview for this match. If I have to bet it, I'm taking the goal with Liverpool for sure, even going on the road, because I think this is a little bit inflated on City. I make City like minus 148. And so I'm a little bit over on City here, or over on Liverpool's chances relatively. So I would lean toward the Reds. But again, I want to wait a little bit till we get more information on where we sit with the race here. And it's very interesting. The potential look-ahead lines for City Arsenal in a couple of weeks, right around the same number. So the market is actually pricing Arsenal and Liverpool relatively comparably, which will make for an interesting battle that they have coming up in a couple of weeks.
Speaking of Arsenal, minus 334 at home, hosting Anthony's Leeds, plus 750. The Peacocks are, and the draw is 5-1 here. It's about as high as you'll see the draw get in a game. It's I should clarify, like in some real big prices, like when City plays Bournemouth or whatever, you'll see obviously inch up this high, but between two teams that we all think are relatively competent, a 5-1 is a pretty big number on a draw. Leeds is sitting on 26 points. Let's talk about the relegation battle real quick, since we're getting to our first relegation team. Crystal Palace in 12th place on 27 points. Southampton, if you recall, they went into the break on 23 points. So there's 4 points separating 12th from 20th. This thing's wide open. Meanwhile, at the top, Arsenal's got the 8-point edge with one more match played over City. They're going to need to get these 3 points. Anthony, do you give your Peacocks a chance to keep this thing close?
I do. And I think it all goes back to what happened in the first meeting. And I know BJ is scoffing at me and he's stunned. He's glancing off in all directions. Look, go back to the first meeting. What happened? It was at Leeds, but Leeds did a better job of disrupting Arsenal's possession structure than probably any team they've played all season. I think that's pretty fair to say. Even City didn't even have the similar approach. I mean, you just talked about it, BJ. Like, City sat off and was comfortable just giving Arsenal possession and then, beating them in transition. I think Leeds can disrupt. I think it's very notable that Tomiyasu, who's their best defensive passer in the back line, is out, and Saliba is out. It's very hard to bet against this Arsenal attack, especially now that Gabby Jesus is back and looks like he'll start Nketiah out. So you're going to have the Jesus, Martinelli, Saka front three. I do think they'll score. I think Arsenal will probably create many chances against this Leeds defense, which is still not good. But remember what I've been saying and what the numbers have been saying about Leeds for the last really 2 months, 3 months, this whole season, is that the attacking process for this team is much better than its results have showed, and that positive regression was coming. And they get the 2-2 draw with Brighton in a match where they were probably a little fortunate. They get the 4-2 win against Wolves. They led throughout and still conceded almost 3 expected goals to Wolves, just a big red flag. But again, the creation of chances was impressive in that match, even though they did ultimately lose XG. They were winning the whole match. So you're seeing the signs, and everything about this Leeds team gives me a belief that they can score on Arsenal, and that, Arsenal's defense, if there's going to be regression for the Gunners, I still think it's on the defensive end, not necessarily the attack with Jesus back. And this is a Leeds attack that, is right around league average, 11th in non-penalty XG, 9th in shots. So I like this team. They create high turnovers. They do tilt the field pretty well. They're not going to get overwhelmed by Arsenal's pressure. So I like Leeds to score. So I'm going to take both teams to score here. You can find it right around even money, -110. I like that here. It's my going to be my best bet of the weekend too, which we'll touch on later.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Had
BJ,
this one circled. I know BJ.
yeah, he's got
knew I had
nothing
it
for us
circled
here.
weeks
He's just
ago.
gonna sit back and watch.
I'm gonna sit
his
back and watch
Gunners.
Arsenal score 4 goals. I mean, the thing is, what I'll say about Leeds is that they have been a little more passive under Javi Garcia. Like, it's been interesting. You know, the match against Brighton is I think is a good barometer of like what this Leeds team is going to do. Is that, you know, in the past, Jesse Marsh's teams would obviously press high intensity, get up and create a lot of open space, which you just cannot do against a team like Brighton, Arsenal, or one of the big six. So I do expect Leeds to kind of sit off here and to not press as high as they normally would. Yeah, not having Saliba in there scares the crap out of me. I don't know if they're probably gonna have to go with Rob Holding or somebody else back there now that Tomiyasu is out. So we'll see. They might switch Ben White in there to that center back position. So I'm not really sure what Arsenal's going to do, but Leeds, you know, no Tyler Adams, which is pretty big for Leeds. I mean, obviously now they have Weston McKennie and Roca, who can be good replacements, but I mean, Tyler Adams has been everything to them in their midfield so far. So it is a loss. So Arsenal's ability to both play through the middle of the pitch and both out wide as well should be able to give them enough to win this match. So I could see another 4-1 win against Crystal Palace right before the international break. But no, Arsenal's winning this match. Anthony, if he thinks that Leeds is going to compete, he's crazy.
Zaha hit the post in like the 5th minute of that match. And I was like, that was the chance. Like, there's not going to be another chance. We blew it. And then it just came kind of from nothing off a set piece. And Jeff Schlupp was the hero last week. So hopefully, we'll continue to fade this Arsenal defense, which conceded in 7 seconds to Bournemouth, set piece to Crystal Palace, who hadn't scored in all season, I think, until that goal.
Well, now can we go to Crystal Palace next because they're back?
Yeah, let's do it. Crystal Palace.
They're back after their 4-1 road defeat to the Arsenal.
No. That's not because of that.
Well, they're plus 150 hosting Leicester, plus 190. The draw is plus 225. As I said, there are basically half the league is in the relegation battle. These are two of the teams in the thick of it. Leicester's on 25 points, 17th place, only 1 point ahead of West Ham and Bournemouth. They've also played one more match than West Ham. Palace, baby. You know how on soccer, there's the soccer accounts that will tweet out like news that's not really new, like it's fake, fake news, I guess is the way to put it. And they do a good job, like with the captions or whatever. It's like The Onion.
Yeah.
I went all morning thinking that, it was just a parody account. That
it's crazy that they fired him.
Do you think that's the crazier thing?
Yeah, what's crazier?
Yeah, like that's
or bringing him back.
I think bringing Hodgson, I almost could get the logic of it, like another team doing it in the back. Yeah. Like if Leicester had brought in Roy Hodgson, I'd be like, all right, like I see what they're trying to do here. They just want to grind their way to eight more points and try to get out of the battle or whatever. But the whole team last year was talking about how happy they were to have like a new set of ideas, and it's the same team. I don't know if we're going to see a new manager bounce here because it's not a new manager.
I mean, it depends on how bad you think they actually were. We've talked about this. I mean, it was ridiculous they fired him. I mean, was he supposed to get results against City and Arsenal in the last 2 weeks that got him fired?
And Brighton.
And they played the hardest schedule by a long shot in the league. It's not even close. And so there probably will be a new manager bounce because now instead of playing Arsenal, City, Brentford, Brighton, Chelsea, and United, they're going to play Leicester, Southampton, Bournemouth, and Wolves. So yes, they will probably get more points. But I'm not optimistic about this. I mean, his teams were always terrible. I used to bet against Palace all the time. I used to say, look, this team, they steal results. It's the Hodgson way. They have no attack. They defend deep, but they don't do it well. At least this team was an average Premier League defensive team. And now they're just not. And Leicester, I'm not going to bet them a single time this season. So unless it's like end of the season and they get one of those inflated spots where the other team gets, juiced up, I don't think I'm betting them all year. And the market doesn't really downgrade them enough here for me to bet on or against them. This is an easy pass for me. And the under 2.5 is like minus 140. So I'll pass.
That's going to be fun. Another relegation battler, Bournemouth, plus 155, hosting Fulham. The draw here is plus 230. Fulham is plus 180. On the road, Bournemouth, there's like it kind of feels like, I know they've had a couple wins of late, including the one over Liverpool, which was hysterical. They've got two wins out of their last 5 matches. It feels like they've had a better kind of stretch than they actually have. Like I was like, all right, they're clawing their way out of the drop zone perhaps, but they've won twice since the World Cup. Like those are their 2 wins. It's hard to get behind this team, but at the same time, like we all think the same thing about this Fulham team, that like at some point they are just going to precipitously drop safely into like the teens on the table. So this is a pass for me. I would look towards Bournemouth if anything, but I'm just not going to do it. Anthony.
Yeah, I'll take Bournemouth here at home. Pick them. Fulham has some major injury issues, so my number's right about right. But then once you figure out that Mitrovic is out here, I think that's just a huge downgrade. He's going to miss almost a month, which is significant after that FA Cup brouhaha against Man United. But yeah, I think that we've talked. I don't need to go into depth about how Fulham, has run like gods. I've got them 14th in my ratings. I've got Bournemouth still 20th. Even once I account for home field and then Mitrovic, I make Bournemouth a slightly bigger favorite here. And so, it's like minus 112 and the number's like minus 110. It's not really a huge edge, but like I said, Mitrovic being out, I think you could argue there's no more important player in the league this year to their team, just given how they want to play and given his production, how good it's been.
I would disagree with you. I'd say that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is, considering Everton.
He might be back this week.
So many matches without him. All right, this is a huge one for us. Brighton and Brentford. You could call this the Wondergoal derby. We love both of these teams. Brighton, odds on, they're minus 150 at home hosting the Bees, who are 4-1. The draw is 3-1. I don't know, after all we've been through as a podcast and how many times we've said this, I can't believe neither one of you are joining me here. When the price gets like this on Brentford, you just do it. Like I know Brighton's good, but you look since the World Cup, the difference between these two teams is not all that stark. Both have 6 wins. Brighton's done it from 1 less match played. Brentford's lost once, drawn 5. Brighton's lost twice, drawn 3. Expected goals, the edge goes to Brighton a little bit, but the Brentford's defensive form is quite good. They've allowed 9 goals in their last 12 matches. Should be around 13 according to expected goals, so some regression coming, but still that's a really good number in the Premier League. I'm shocked that neither one of you are joining this party here, BJ.
It's a sin to bet against either of these teams, Michael, and you know that's part of our podcast creed. Listen, like, yeah, I agree the number's getting a little bit high. Like, I have Brighton at minus 131. If you look at the last time these two teams faced off, it was like the 3rd match after De Zerbi got hired, and Brighton created close to 2 expected goals, but they just couldn't put anything in the back of the net. Brentford capitalized on their 2 big chances, put them in the back of the net, and they won the match 2-0. Brighton held over 70% possession in that match. That is the most that they've held in a Premier League match this season outside of the one against Crystal Palace on the road. But yeah, I expect Brentford to sit deep. I expect them to sit in their low block and look to play very direct against Brighton, who, Brighton they didn't look great against Crystal Palace right before the break. Palace pressed them high. They were effective in doing so. And Brighton had some real trouble building up throughout most of that match. And you could say that Crystal Palace might have been the better team in that match. But yeah, if Brighton is getting up to minus 175, minus 180, I mean, I could talk myself into a Brentford +1, but it's just so dangerous to bet against this Brighton team, given how great they are offensively, especially at home.
It's dangerous,
Here's-
but when you're getting 4-1 on a really good team, it becomes less dangerous. I mean, and there's higher numbers.
It
out
looks
there
like,
too.
hey, it looks like Ivan Toney's going to play the rest of the season. Okay, I don't really see a scenario where they suspend him 5 matches before the season ends. So like you have that benefit if you're Brentford. But yeah, it's terrifying betting against either of these teams. So I'm happy to just sit on the sidelines and watch our two children go at it.
Here's a fun one. Brentford has played. They have one win all season in a match where they've had more possession than the opponent in the Prem. Think about that. And it's not even.
Who was that? Who was that?
There are 12 matches this season that they've played where they have had more possession than the opponent in percentage wise.
Yeah.
Of course, possession can be correlated to whether you're ahead or behind. But the one win was Bournemouth, 2-0 in January. They have had 10 matches where they had 37% of the ball or less. They have not lost a single one of those matches.
They are the best.
They are the best underdog in the league.
They are the best.
It's great.
They are the best.
Action Network sends out like a Spotify Wrapped thing
just
at the end of the
Brentford.
year, and they tell you who the team that you made the most money on. And this ended up being a walkover for Brentford because of the 19-1 when they beat City, but it was them by so far. And I don't think I bet them once as a favorite.
I mean, the market just, and this is to your point, Michael, where the market just has not caught up with them. They're still pricing them like they're below bottom end of the table Premier League team, not like a relegation team, but like the 13th or 14th best team in the Premier League, which is just totally not the case. And now we're starting to see it with Brighton, where for so long we were like, oh my gosh, Brighton's undervalued. And now the market's getting a little too high on them, where it's like, I don't know if I want to back Brighton at this price, even though they're playing so good. We saw it against West Ham, obviously, when they were like -140 against West Ham and closed around -150. It's like,
that was the question I was going to ask. Is like,
now we're sitting
they beat
like
the brakes off West Ham.
But like, what my question was going to ask is like, if Brighton was hosting Villa in the spot,
they'd probably be -120, honestly.
Yeah, like where would this number be?
Probably, I don't know.
It's I can't get it.
I think
I'm like a little astounded.
The stat I said kind of breaks the models on this team, because I know that there's non-shot XG, and like having possession and squad value and all that stuff that goes into power rating these teams. But like when a team breaks it for like 2 straight years, right? It's easy.
Like,
yeah, this is why this is a good lesson to everybody out there, Anthony, that like possession matters, but it also doesn't matter at all. Because here's the reason why we love expected goals. Expected goals isn't everything. It's not like the one end all be all of everything, but it is the finality of everything else that we talk about, from possession to passes per defensive action, crosses. All these other things go into creating a chance, right? So if you're not able to create that chance, it's the Wolves argument, right? Like, you can hold a bunch of possession, you can get the ball into the final third, you can do all these great things, but if you can't generate a high quality chance, then it means nothing. And what Brentford does is they are essentially what we've been talking about with Bournemouth. They're like, oh, they're so good at creating these 1 or 2 good opportunities. Well, Brentford has taken that to the next level, where they don't control out of possession and their counterattacks are just so effective. So, I mean, just goes to show you that, yeah, possession doesn't mean as much as people will say it is in the media.
Arsenal under Arteta until like a year and a half ago too, same thing. 70% of the ball, 12 shots,
exactly
0.8 XG, never looked like
this
scoring.
Is maybe why I didn't believe in Arsenal, Anthony, coming into the season, because they were doing that type of crap.
I'm really astounded that you guys aren't going to bet them. Forest next, they're +190. Hosting Wolves +155. The draws +210. Yeah, this is another number that jumped off the page a little bit here. We said it a bunch about Wolves, that they're just kind of enjoying some good fortune in terms of their results since the World Cup. If you look at their points compared to expected points, they're running hot. Defensively, they've not been good. They're creating a little bit more than they usually do. I will say that in terms of like expected goals since the World Cup, they've got 14 in 13 matches. which feels like an improvement for them. These numbers are pretty much like there's not much of a difference between Wolves and Nottingham Forest. And then when you factor in home ice or home field advantage,
Home ice, yep.
oh yeah, home ice, the ice at City Ground. Nottingham Forest knows how the boards work there really well. But when you factor in home field advantage, the tricky trees look like a good bet here, Anthony.
Yeah, I agree. And I've not been much of a fan of Steve Cooper and Forest this year. They still look completely shambolic defensively far too often for me to trust them. But yeah, I mean, just pure aggregate numbers. Wolves have been about a half goal worse than their opponents this year. Forest is like basically right around that. If you take out some penalty stuff, like it's roughly the same team. And Forest has what I think is a better attack than Wolves on paper. So I've got the better attack. I'm at home and I'm a pick 'em. So, I'm going to take Forest happily at plus money draw no bet for sure. If not for the Leeds thing, it would be my best bet this weekend.
It might add it up on the list anyways. BJ, you kind of scoffed at the bookmakers for setting the line where it is.
Right. I have a trivia question for you guys. Wolves has won 2 matches away from home this season. Can you name the opponents they've beaten?
Of course.
Michael, you can name one.
Yeah, of course. That's the easy one.
Mm-hmm.
So the one is Everton. The other one,
I'll give you a hint. It was one of the worst beats that we suffered over the last, 2 months.
Oh my gosh, that Southampton disgrace.
Yep. Those are the only 2 matches they've won away from home, where they were down a man, down a goal, somehow came from behind to beat Southampton, and then scored a late winner against Everton, which, Michael, they did lose the expected goals battle 1.7 to 0.8, so they didn't really deserve it.
Yeah, they got destroyed in that match.
Away from home this season, Wolves minus 7.7 expected goal differential. And these 2 teams have played actually twice this season. Once in the League Cup, where Nottingham Forest won on penalties, which is a pretty even match. And the second one, which was at Wolves, won 1-0. But both teams got a penalty in that match. Wolves converted theirs. Nottingham Forest missed theirs. So expected goals was about even. Wolves didn't register a shot from open play that had an XG rating over 0.1, which is pretty typical of what we see from Wolves. But, I mean, the way that Wolves wants to play, right? They want a lot of possession in the defensive third, build up from the back, get the ball out wide and swinging crosses. Well, Nottingham Forest is not going to press them. They're going to sit very, very deep. They're going to stay very, very compact. And basically it's just going to be a bunch of shots from distance from Wolves. And we'll see if one of those goes in. But guess what? Dean Henderson is in goal. Keylor Navas is in goal now. And he's actually a good goalkeeper at saving those shots from outside the box. So, I mean, Wolves, this is another funny stat, is Wolves has the second most touches in their defensive third in the Premier League. Do you guys know who the first team is? Anthony,
Arsenal or City?
No, it's your Tottenham.
Ooh.
Yeah, go look at it.
We also probably have the most giveaways in our final third too.
Exactly. So it's just like Wolves is very, very good at holding possession in their own defensive third. And then again, it's the same story over and over again. So they should not be favorites here, especially at the City Ground, where Nottingham Forest has played better this season. So I'm with you guys. Nottingham Forest, draw no bet at plus 105 for me.
A grouper on one of the worst teams in the Premier League. What could go wrong? What could go wrong for Chelsea when they host Aston Villa as minus 154 favorites? Villa is plus 450. The draw is plus 280 for our partnership with the New York Post. I was talking about how if you had to pick one of the 8 teams for a futures ticket in the Champions League left, it would probably be Chelsea at this point. They're like double the odds of Real Madrid, who they're playing, and that's probably not right.
They're like plus 115 to beat them.
I like Leipzig.
Yeah, Leipzig could still do it. They could still do it. I have faith in them to somehow come. Maybe City will get kicked out for FIFA.
You just got that Napoli ticket.
Yeah, the Napoli ticket looks good too. Anyways, Chelsea and Villa now. I mean, Villa's been bad. They're on the beach, coming back from an international break. They do win the award, I think, for being the first team on the beach. They should be. I mean, you can make the argument Chelsea is too in the Premier League. They don't. What are they playing for?
No, they're still alive.
To catch who? Tottenham?
Brentford.
They're 11 points back. They're on the Champions League beach.
They got to win the Champions League to get back in it.
Yeah. I got nothing here. I think that you could with the way Chelsea's trending, and if you want to talk about if you want to make a square parlay with a team like Chelsea and I don't know Arsenal or something, go for it. But other than that, I've really got no betting interest in this one. Anything for you, BJ?
No, I will be passing. I was maybe going to give a look at Aston Villa, and then I started to go through the defensive numbers again to remind me like just how bad they have been recently. So essentially, since they lost 4-2 to Leicester, I'm just going to go through how many expected goals they've allowed. 2.6 to Leicester, 3.3 to City, 3.2 to Arsenal, 1.6 to Everton, 0.2 to Palace. So good defensive performance there, but Palace got a red card. 2.1 to West Ham, and then 1.3 to Bournemouth over this past weekend. So I don't know what's going on with Unai Emery in his defense, but I think it's just what I've kind of been saying for over the past few weeks is that Aston Villa just is trying to play out of the back way too much and committing a ton of high turnovers and giving teams transition opportunities to go at their goal and score. And Emi Martinez might not be the best goalkeeper in the world anymore. So I will be passing. Chelsea for me in my numbers is still a tad overvalued. So, I mean, I think the market just continues to price them like, hey, they're going to come back. They're going to be fine, which they probably will at some point. Again, like Michael said, I don't really know what they're fighting for. This is a look-ahead spot because they got Liverpool in 3 days after this match. And then obviously their trip to Real Madrid next week as well. So, it's a pass for me. If I had to bet anything, I'd maybe take a look at Villa.
I think Chelsea has so many players that are like in contention for places. I don't really see them like mailing in the rest of the season, especially since they've been so bad, but they have been better. I mean, 1.5 expected goals or more in 6 of their last 7 matches, the only dud coming at Spurs when I had a big bet on them, of course. BJ mentioned it. The Villa defense has fallen off. The Chelsea attack continues to trend in the right direction. We're finally getting some finishing production from Kai Havertz after he was in a brutal run of form with his finishing. And you're seeing the fruits of that. I mean, Felix and Havertz and Mudryk still hasn't really been productive, but they have the pieces here. I'm not betting them in this spot though.
All right, let's flip it to Sunday. We'll talk West Ham. They are in a relegation spot as we speak right now, 18th place on 24 points, but they've only played 26 matches. Every other team has played at least 27 and some 28. And this is a huge one for this relegation battle as West Ham is minus 138 at home hosting Southampton, who are propping up the table with 23 points from 28 games. Situationally, like I think both teams need to go into this one thinking 3 points at minimum. So could set up to be honestly the game of the weekend outside of Brighton and Brentford for our purposes. West Ham, like I still think that they're maybe a little undervalued just generally with the way that they played, but it's so hard. Like at this point in the season, it's just so hard to just keep going with them. I just feel like as soon as I feel like West Ham's about to turn it up a notch or two, then I go back to them and they don't reward me. They lost 4-0 to Brighton, then drew Villa 1-1 going into the break after a big win against Forest. So I got nothing here. Anything for you, Anthony?
It's just crazy that their leading goal scorer this season has 4 goals.
4 goals, yeah.
Jared Bowen has 4 goals. Syed Benrahma has 4 goals. Scamacca and Antonio have 6 combined in 22 90s. I mean, that's really been it. I mean, they used to have good striker named Mikel Antonio, and they no longer have that version of him. He's 33 and he's really fallen off. And Scamacca hasn't been healthy enough to replace those minutes. And as a result, I mean, the attack just stinks. So I don't really want to bet them as a minus 140 home favorite. They were, right around this same number against Forest a couple weeks ago. And I know BJ had them and they rolled. And like, I could see that a very similar situation with them in this spot, but I'm not laying the juice. I would need like minus 110 to bet Southampton.
BJ, you do have a play here though.
I do. I have one of my favorite bets. Both teams to score now at minus 120. I know Southampton just scored 3 goals against Tottenham, but they've been bad offensively since the World Cup break. before that match against Tottenham, they had created just 9 non-penalty expected goals in 12 matches. And West Ham, although they haven't been great defensively as of late, they've been really good against lesser competition in the Premier League. Against the bottom half of the table, they've played 13 matches. They have only conceded 11.5 expected goals and 3 big scoring chances. And the last time they faced Southampton, albeit it was under Ralph Hasenhüttl, the match was a 1-1 draw. Southampton only created half an expected goal, and their only goal came off of a deflection from about 30 yards out. And the thing about Southampton is, like, how they are effective, and you saw it against Tottenham, is when the game becomes very transitional back and forth. But West Ham has been one of the better transition defenses in the Premier League, and a lot of the underlying numbers suggest that as well. So, Southampton could do what they did against Tottenham. They could put up over 2 expected goals, but away from home this season, they have not been very good. And now they have Che Adams questionable for this match. So there goes one of their more productive attackers. Also, West Ham, offensively, like Anthony mentioned, they just stink. Somebody on this podcast gave out Jared Bowen for Golden Boot this season. I won't say who. But I mean, they are third to last in the Premier League in final third penalty box conversion rate, when they're already not getting in the final third at a high rate. So that is not a good mixture for West Ham. So I like both teams to score no at -120. I have it projected at -155. I just don't trust either of these attacks, and I think that line is a little too low.
Also on Sunday,
how does Vieira get fired, but Moyes keeps his job?
Because he's a genius, David Moyes.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, now we'll get to it in a little bit, but there's somebody in Germany just fired one of the best managers in Europe. So, okay. So somebody's on the market right now. So you might see some managers get fired in favor of a certain hot name.
All right, we got 2 more to go in the Premier League. Newcastle and Man United on Sunday. The Magpies +140 at home. United +190 on the road, and the draw is +240. This one, for the race for the top 4, is quite high stakes. United on 50 points from 26 matches, and Newcastle 47 points. They're in 5th place because somehow Tottenham's still in 4th. I think this number looks about right, actually. I got nothing here. Could maybe see a bet on the over, Anthony, but that's about it.
I agree. I think that Casemiro is probably the second most. We joked earlier about Mitrovic. Like, Casemiro does matter a lot for what United wants to do, and he provides the extra shots that they haven't been getting through Eriksen being out, and him getting forward a little bit, and of course the defensive structure as well is important. And his absence, I think, is notable. And I also still have the same questions I've always had about United's attack. I mean, Rashford's been in world-class form, but if he drops a little bit off, the surrounding production just hasn't been as consistent. So those are my questions more long-term about United, but in this spot, I don't really have an interest in fading them, although I probably will be fading them on Wednesday when they play RBs.
Yeah.
BJ,
Yeah, I mean, this is a slam Newcastle spot. I don't know what you guys aren't seeing. Obviously, United just beat them in the League Cup, right? They beat them 2-0. But that was with Casemiro. Now they're going to be without Casemiro, who is vitally important for them, like Anthony mentioned. With him in the lineup this season, they're only allowing 1.11 expected goals per 90. Without him, they're allowing 1.68 expected goals per 90. The matches they played without him, it was at the beginning of the season against both Brighton, Brentford, and then when he just got signed for the Liverpool match, where they got absolutely dismantled in transition in all 3 of those matches. Then he was suspended for the match against Arsenal, where they conceded over 3 expected goals and could not keep Arsenal out of their own final third for the entire second half. And then the 2 matches against Leeds, and then obviously against Leicester, when they still allowed 1.6 expected goals. What is interesting about this, though, is what they did in the League Cup final. They basically played so painfully direct and just didn't even try to build out of the back. In that match, 60% of De Gea's passes went into Newcastle's final third of the pitch because he's not very good on the ball. So they basically just said, and Newcastle is an incredibly good pressing team. They obviously lead the Premier League in high turnovers. So United said, let's not even try to build out of the back. Let's just play those 50-50 balls long, and let's, play very direct, which is something they've done under Ten Hag for quite a long time now. United in that match had 4 10-plus pass sequences, a 65% build-up completion percentage. That is awful for a team trying to build out of the back. But guess what? They still scored 2 goals, but expected goals was about even. Now, the problem with United is, and especially without Casemiro, is if they are going to play that style again and play very, very direct, that plays into exactly what Newcastle wants to do. Although Newcastle can't press them high if United's going to send it long, Newcastle is better when they can play that very direct style. If you look at Opta, they have 41 build-up attacks compared to 58 or 54 direct attacks. So Newcastle is much better when they're playing that direct style. And guess what? They've been way better at home than they have been on the road this season. Their only loss has been to Liverpool. They have a plus 13.1 expected goal differential in 13 matches. So while United, when they've had to play the top half of the Premier League away from home, has a minus 6.6 expected goal differential in 6 matches. They have not been good. So without Casemiro, I do not see why United should be even close to a pick 'em at St. James Park. So I'll be on Newcastle. I have them projected as minus 107 favorites. So I'll give you them drawing a bet at minus 130.
I'm sure we have some United fans who listen to this, and
I hope they can.
They were probably so happy last week when we didn't have a show, and they were like, "We don't have to listen to BJ say United's overrated this week." And but he's back.
Listen on Monday morning too, because I'll do the same thing again.
I actually think they'll lose to Brentford, but we'll see. Yeah. Is it at Brentford or at United?
It's at United.
So we'll get we'll get a 1.5.
It's gonna happen. What happened last year when we were all on Brentford? It was on a Monday, and United just beat them 3-0. That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah. Right.
All right, let's wrap up the Premier League with a doozy, another Wondergoal derby. My Everton plus 240 at home hosting BJ Spurs plus 120. The draws plus 230. Anthony, as the Spurs hater on this show, you were calling for Conte to lose his job after spending all last year, praising him.
That's how it works.
Yeah. Do you think that this price is? Do you think that the new manager bounce has been baked too far into this price with the way that Everton has turned into Real Madrid with Ronaldo on it?
Yeah, I think I was impressed with Everton's attacking performance against Chelsea, not so much defensively. I thought that they conceded 2 to Chelsea, but it easily could have been 3 or 4. And I still think, we talked about this going into last week with Chelsea and Everton, that, Sean Dyche, this is not Burnley Sean Dyche. This is a much more high event team. They're creating more chances than that Burnley team ever did, but they're also not nearly as good defensively. And I think, from a Tottenham perspective, I think the number's about right in terms of sides. Spurs are rightfully favored, but I'm not betting Everton. You take a lot of juice to get the draw protection there. So I like the over again. Over 2.5 is plus money here. The biggest thing with Tottenham and that I'm worried about is something BJ mentioned earlier, which is that, they do have the most defensive final third touches, but they've been giving the ball away a lot. And I think Everton, like I said, this is not normal Dyche. They're going to, go after Spurs a little bit here and try to surprise them. Spurs were more aggressive under Stellini when he was out for Conte. We kind of got a trial run of what it might look like with Stellini and Mason kind of managing, because Conte had the medical procedure, and they were much more aggressive themselves, contesting midfield more, trying to hold the ball higher up the pitch than the Conte teams, which were so defensive, so much built on counters. So I think there's just going to be more back and forth in this game. I like the over.
I agree. I love the over too. I mean, we've been saying it for a bunch of weeks now that, Sean Dyche's Everton now is this high event style soccer. I mean, in his 8 matches in charge, their matches are averaging 3.2 expected goals. And guess what, Michael? Everton has underperformed in those matches too. They've scored 7 off of around 12.5 expected. So they're due for a little bit of positive regression here. And what we saw, I think this will kind of we've seen it a couple times now where Everton's going to play a team that's either going to play, a 3-5-2 or some version of a low block and counter. They've played against Villa. That match ended in about 3.5 expected goals. They played against Forest. That was a 2-1 match. Then they obviously played against Brentford, which they scored in the very first minute, but ended up conceding over 2 expected goals to the Bees. So their problems in transition defense, which were very, very evident under Frank Lampard, still somewhat exist under Sean Dyche because he is being more aggressive. Like Anthony mentioned, he is trying to disrupt build-up play more rather than just sitting in that 4-4-2 low block structure. If you watch, especially the match against Forest, the middle of the pitch was wide open time and time again. So doing that against Tottenham, now Granted, how does Tottenham been generating a lot of their chances under Conte? It's obviously getting the ball out wide and swinging crosses. They've completed the most crosses of anybody in the Premier League into the penalty area. And like we've said many, many times, they are the best set piece team in the Premier League. Those are two things that Everton is very bad at. They're dead last in defending crosses, and they're near the bottom in defending set pieces. So I think Tottenham's probably going to put the ball in the back of the net twice here. But I mean, the way Everton's been playing, these prices have not adjusted for what Sean Dyche has been doing. So I agree with Anthony. I love over 2.5 goals at plus 115. I have match projected at 2.77 goals. So yeah, these Everton overs are just going to continue until the market corrects them.
Yeah, one more thing. We're also out of fullbacks. Everybody's hurt. Ben Davis went off. He's going to be out. Emerson Royale's out for the year. Perisic went off injured in the match for Croatia. Sessegnon is a doubt to make this one. He might be back, but it seems unlikely. That leaves nobody except for Pedro Porro as fullbacks. So there could be some defensive issues for Tottenham here. They may have to go back 4 out of necessity. That I don't know who's going to play left back if Perisic is out. Like it's a very weird tactical issue that they're going to have to deal with defensively.
Probably Hyunmin Son's going to have to play some version of left wing back or something.
Poach did that one time. FA Cup semi.
I'll say it again. I think I said this before the Chelsea Everton match. Like I think it does make a good live betting opportunity as well. Like if Everton go down, for them to get a point because they do have the ability to get back in games when they chase them. No,
Spurs have blown a lot of leads.
As we saw, yeah, and also Everton entering this weekend are only 24 points off of top 4, or 23 points off of top 4. So look out. Now we'll move on to Serie A, talk a little La Liga after that. Ligue, we'll do our 3-leg underdog parlay, and then give out our favorite bets in the Premier League for this upcoming match week. Italy, BJ.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got?
I like Udinese on the road against Bologna. Udinese this season had a really, really like torrid start. They won 6 straight matches. They beat Roma 4-0. They beat Inter 3-1. But they went through this big swoon in the middle of the season where they won just 1 match in 17 tries. They were underperforming during that stretch, had a -6 actual goal differential versus only a -1.5 expected goal differential. And during that time, they only picked up 13 points when their expected points was around 22. They have won their last 2 matches now, including an emphatic 3-1 win over AC Milan this past weekend. So it looks like they've gotten their confidence back a little bit. And Udinese, they're a very direct counter-attacking team. They typically play out of a 3-5-2. They love to get the ball out in wide areas. And I was reading some tactical stuff about them because I'll be honest, I haven't watched every single Udinese match this season. But they do this very coy tactical thing, which I think can be very effective against Bologna, is that their striker, Beto, who's been in incredible form all season long, he usually decides, whoever's playing alongside him, whether it be Isaac Success or whoever, usually like to vacate the middle of the pitch when they're doing a counterattack, and then it allows Wallace and Roberto Pereira to just come up. So they just like try to overwhelm you in the final third. And the last time they faced Bologna, it worked. They lost the match 2-1, but they created 1.9 expected goals. If you go watch the highlights, the very first goal was a transitional goal off of cross. And Udinese wasn't very good defensively in that match, but what happened is they tried to play out of the back way too much, and they got committed a bunch of high turnovers, which is how Bologna scored all of their goals. So I think they'll have a different tactical plan this time, probably send a lot of more balls long instead of trying to play out of the back. So I have Udinese projected as a slight road favorite. Their underlying numbers this season overall are better than Bologna, -1 expected goal differential versus Bologna's -6. So I don't think that they should be, or Bologna should be, a plus 125 favorite at home. So I like Udinese draw no bet at plus 130.
Anthony, anything in Serie A?
Yeah, I'm fading Lazio. They just had a huge win in the Rome derby, the Derby de
Luck
Capitale.
box.
Yeah, total luck box win. They're up to 2nd in the table now. I mean, it's just a hilarious sequence. But they go on the road to Monza as a favorite. They're marginally better than Monza over the course of the season. Even if you say, okay, we're missing something in these numbers, and that they're just baking some overperformance that's going to come for this team, and you say, okay, Monza's priors, I know BJ hated them coming into the season. Even if you do that, it still doesn't even get me to this line where I have this closer to a coin flip. So I'm going to take the half a goal on Monza at home. I also like Fiorentina against Inter Milan in that matchup. Fiorentina continues to be a buy team for me. They are the 2nd favorites to win the Conference League now. So our boys are looking
probably should
decent.
be the favorites, honestly.
Yeah, they're better than West Ham.
Yeah, and they have an easier path.
All right, La Liga, Anthony.
Yeah, we're on the same game here, so we can just kind of break this down. Villarreal's defense, since losing Emery, even before he left, had really started to slide considerably. And they do have major holes there defensively. And I think Sociedad is ripe to exploit them. The market, I think, has been wrong on this Villarreal defense for the better part of 3 or 4 months. So I'm going to take both teams to score, and I'm going to take a little sprinkle on some plus 150 for Sociedad to score in the first half in the matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to be on Sociedad draw no bet at plus 120. So ever since Quique Setién took over on October 26th, Villarreal has been perfectly average, plus 0.15 non-penalty expected goal differential over that exact same time period. Sociedad's been plus 8.6. And this is the same Villarreal team that just got knocked out of the Conference League by a very, very average Anderlecht side from Belgium. Same side that's lost 3-1 to Elche, conceded over 3 expected goals to the worst team in Spain and throughout Europe. Same team that lost 4-2 to Mallorca. And the problem that exists under Setién, which is a massive problem in this match, is Villarreal painfully wants to play out of the back, wants to build out of the back, which there's nothing wrong with trying to do that. But they're going up against a team that I like to call the Newcastle of La Liga. Sociedad loves to set these pressing traps, loves to press high. If you look through all their pressing numbers, they're number 1 in Spain in passes per defensive action, second in high turnovers. Villarreal, since Setién took over, as an offensive pass per defensive action of around 11, which is close to average in La Liga. But so, I think they're going to struggle a little bit playing through pressure. Sociedad, though, is an incredible defensive team. They're only allowing 0.81 non-penalty expected goals per 90. They're third in big scoring chances allowed. They're top 5 in disrupting opponents' build-up play. And they're second in expected threat allowed. They've also been the best defense away from home in La Liga this season, only 10.8 expected goals in 13 matches. And Anthony mentioned Villarreal's defensive problems. I mean, they're 11th in non-penalty expected goals this season. And the problem for them is once the opponent enters the final third, it usually ends up in penalty box entry because they're near the bottom in final third penalty box entry conversion rate. But the last time these teams met, I mean, granted, it was under Unai Emery. I mean, Sociedad did an incredible job of controlling the match. They won the match 1-0. They held 60% possession, and they outshot Villarreal 17-5 with winning the expected goals 1.2 to 0.2. So I actually have Sociedad projected as a slight road favorite at Villarreal. I don't understand why there's no real injury concerns here for Sociedad. So I don't understand why they're underdogs. So I'm with Anthony. I like Sociedad draw no bet at plus 120.
All right, BJ, you are the Lone Ranger in Ligue 1 for us this week.
I know. It's shocking. I like over 3 goals in Strasbourg, Monaco. Strasbourg is one of the highest event style teams in France. Their matches average around 2.9 expected goals, but their defense has been really, really bad this season. They're close to the bottom in Ligue 1. It's the reason why they're in the relegation fight. They can't defend set pieces. Give up way too many big scoring chances, which is not what you can do against Monaco, who has been one of the best offensive teams in France since coming back from the World Cup break, averaging 1.9 expected goals. So I have a little over, I have about 3.2 expected goals created for this one or projected for this one. So over 3 goals at plus 120 is a good enough price for me.
Strasbourg, 3 wins in their last 6. Told you they would turn the corner. It just took until April.
Don't rip up those top 3 tickets just yet. They're still alive.
Now time for our underdog parlay. 3 legs. We will end up with a 66-1 parlay at the end of it. BJ,
one of our shorter ones.
I know it's not. I got a little upset when
Michael,
I saw
that's your
it.
own fault. You're in charge of getting the long shot.
Yeah,
I thought that there was no way that I was going to get to the one that I picked because I was the last one on the sheet. But as I said before during the show, you guys weren't on it, which astounded me. And it is a decent price. So, I mean, it's the highest of the 3. Anthony, you could go first.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Eric Winalda signed and approved Stuttgart 3-1 on the road at Union. Union's attack is so poor coming from behind. They've played a lot of goalless draws of late. They are a team that plays a style that leads them prone to get upset and play in a lot of draws as a favorite. So at 3-1, I'm going to take Stuttgart and bank on some positive regression for this team, which is an average Bundesliga team and by every metric, but is sitting in 18th place. Dead last.
I'm going with Brentford. They're taking on Brighton, 2 really solid teams, both with 42 points on the season. Brighton has done it in 2 fewer games, though. I think you could definitely make the argument and feel fine in it that Brighton is the better of the two teams. But what have we learned about this Brentford team in their almost 2 years in the Premier League? They are an incredibly effective underdog, and this price is ridiculous. They're plus 425 to beat Brighton on the road. And when you look at the last couple months here since the World Cup, the numbers are relatively similar. Both teams are sitting in the top 5 in the Premier League table since the World Cup break. Both having a plus 11 goal differential. Brighton has done it in 1 fewer game. And the expected goals numbers paint both teams really kindly, and they're both around 21 expected points. With again, Brighton doing it in 1 less game. So it's not like the difference between these two teams is that stark. And as we said at the top of the show, if you threw Aston Villa at this number, I think it would make sense. But Brentford's a much better team than that. Plus 425. You should just never look away from this number, this kind of number on this kind of team when they're not playing Arsenal or City. BJ, what do you have?
Sociedad plus 220 on the road to Villarreal. Just talked about in the La Liga section. Don't need to talk for 5 more minutes about it, but just a really, really good matchup here for a Villarreal team that wants to play out of the back. A Sociedad team, which is the best pressing team in La Liga and has way better underlying numbers since Quique Setién took over for Villarreal. So Sociedad plus 220 is an insane price to me.
Like I said, 66-1. Should all 3 of those underdogs win? I think that they will. Now on to our best bets for the upcoming Premier League week. We can go right back to you, BJ.
Newcastle, draw no bet at minus 130 at home against Manchester United. Casemiro is going to be out for Manchester United, which is a massive, massive loss for them. With him in the lineup this season, they're only allowing 1.11 expected goals per 90. Without him in the lineup, they're allowing 1.68 expected goals per 90. This is obviously a rematch of the League Cup final a couple months ago where Manchester United won 2-0. But if you look at a lot of the underlying numbers from that match, United and Newcastle had an expected goals battle of basically even. Newcastle tilted the field on United about 65%, controlled a lot of possession, and United didn't really try to play out of the back. They sent a ton of long balls forward into Newcastle's final third of the pitch and basically turned it into a very end-to-end transitional type match, which I think is going to actually benefit Newcastle in this one. If you look through Newcastle's numbers, they only have 41 build-up attacks compared to 54 direct attacks. So even though they're near the top 4, they're not your typical top 4 possession-based type team. They're much better when they can get the match very transitional. So I think that benefits them. They're also one of the better home teams in the Premier League, plus 13 expected goal differential this season, while United is a minus 6.6 expected goal differential away from home against the top half of the Premier League. So I like Newcastle draw no bet at minus 130.
I'll take Nottingham Forest. They are a home underdog against Wolverhampton, around plus 200. I like them on the money line. You look at these two teams, the records may tell you something differently, but they are basically equals. And you can then say, all right, Wolves is a little bit better, but this one will be played at the City Ground. Since the World Cup, Wolverhampton has 5 wins, 2 draws, 6 losses, a minus 3 goal differential, but their expected goal differential is around minus 8. And by expected points, they should be marginally better than what Nottingham Forest has done since the World Cup, which is a 3-4-5 win draw loss with a minus 8 goal differential. Their expected goal differential is just under minus 10. So there's really very little difference between these two sides. You're getting Forest at home where they play a lot better. And as BJ noted before, Wolves struggle to get any damage done on the road. So I'll take Forest as a home dog. Anthony, you can take us home.
Yeah, Arsenal and Leeds, both teams to score. Anything minus 110 or better is good for me there. I've continued to have this Arsenal defense priced worse than the market for about a month or 2 now. We've cashed some good tickets going against their defense, and I think you can be able to continue to do that against a Leeds team that's pretty disruptive and does a good job of limiting opponents' settled possession, which is a major key against Arsenal. Arsenal will be without Saliba and Tomiyasu, 2 key players in their ball progression. Leeds created over 1.5 expected goals in the first meeting between these two teams. They continue to be due for more positive attacking regression, and their underlying process numbers suggest you could argue an above average, but if at worst average attack. So Leeds have their defensive issues. Arsenal should score. Jesus is back, but I think Leeds get on the board as well. So I'll take both teams to score. Yes.
There you have it. Another episode of Wondergoal is in the books. We thank our sponsors, Bet365. Remember, you can sign up with promo code ACTION to get their exclusive sign-up offer in New Jersey, Colorado, and Ohio. And for BJ Cunningham and Anthony DeBundo, I'm Michael Leboff saying we will see you again on Monday morning as we preview a slew of midweek Premier League matches. It's been a while since we've had that, so excited. Anthony, BJ, thank you. Thank you for listening. Good luck with all your bets.